Hello, hello. This is Lisa Taylor coming to you from Birth Matters NYC. Today I'm going to be chatting with a friend of mine, Dan Rindler, who is a Feldenkrais practitioner. We're going to be talking about tummy time today. So just going to wait for him to join. Hi, welcome. Glad you're here. Hello, friends. So Dan Rindler is going to join us today. We'll be talking about tummy time. Oh, there you are, Dan. I see you. So I'll just wait for your request. Glad you're here already. Fantastic. So if you have questions as we're getting set up here, if you have questions about tummy time, we'll be answering them. We're happy to answer them. Oh, my little tripod is jiggling. I guess it's not really a tripod. There we go. Okay, send a request. Here we go. Bringing him on. Come on, Dan. There you are.
I'm here.
Hi, Dan. How's it
going? Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Just got back from taking my kids for their second vaccine, so they're very excited to, be able to do more things in the world before long. I'm so excited to talk with you today about tummy time in general and the work that you do and your philosophical approach as a Feldenkrais practitioner. I've gone through your course and think it's great, and I think it's going to help a lot of parents, hopefully really reduce anxiety, because I feel like this is an area of great anxiety for a lot of parents. So many things are as for new parents, but yeah, so I feel like your approach is really grounded and centered in meditative in a way, in just a beautiful way. So I'm really eager to talk today. Well, so first, as we get started out, can you just please share how you got into this work, and then maybe a little bit about the philosophy behind the work that you do?
Yeah. So let's see, how can I say this and not go on forever? I came to Feldenkrais method for myself first. I was an injured musician, and I had tried so many things, so many different types of therapies and Tai Chi and for years and on and on. I was still having a lot of problems, and I came upon this method, Feldenkrais method, that taught me to use my own body sensations to fine-tune and refine my coordination. And it was life-changing to the point that I got back to playing music. I was a guitar player, but got even more excited about what I'd experienced with this method, and if it could become a way to help other people. And so I began studying it, first with the idea that I would work with performing artists and musicians. But during the 4-year training, our daughter was born, who's now 16. And I started.
And we've known each other since our firstborn were born. Yeah, I love it.
And so with her birth, with becoming a new parent, I got really interested in how the method could be used with parents and babies together. And so I began studying to specialize in that, which meant training with people who were doing similar work and doing lots of training on my own or study on my own, because there wasn't an exact model of what I wanted to do out there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So as we get more specific on tummy time, how did you decide that you wanted to create a course on this? I'm just curious.
Yeah. Well, I didn't create it because I'm like a zealot for spreading the word on tummy time. I think tummy time is really important, and there's lots of studies that confirm that. But the part of it that I was thinking about when I decided to make the course is that it's a really early let's say, choice point in the parent-baby relationship. That we know as parents that this is important, that pediatricians recommending it, that all sorts of authorities um, are telling us this is important. But often our babies are telling us that it is not working for them, right? And so it's one of these early moments in the first weeks or month, or more depending, where we have to decide, we have to sort of thread a needle between listening to ourselves and our baby and what we've been told is best. And so I really made this this course for parents who are feeling stuck in between uh, those two general directions to go to. Okay, so do I listen to the advice that this is important and kind of push through with a baby who's crying, and then, and also cut off my own reaction of, of feeling empathetic or even more, that, it's difficult for us as parents because, it's like baby has to take their medicine more or less, right?
That idea, yeah.
Or do I, and many parents make either of these choices because it's the best choices they have accessible to them. Or do I, ignore the advice of the authorities and listen to my baby and assume that it's going to be okay? And I wanted to present really a middle road option to those two, or actually just a third option that maybe wasn't considered, which was that TummyTime is this incredible opportunity to start building relationship with your baby when things are difficult, right? That a big part of how that there's all kinds of easy moments of building relationship. The baby is snuggling into you and it feels warm and wonderful and you are bonding, and those are incredible. But then there are the moments of relationship building of how are you going to navigate, something difficult together. And I knew I had, something that I could give parents that would give them a way to feel more connected to their baby as they help their baby face this, something challenging in sort of baby steps, right? That there are ways to work with this that keep parents feeling bonded to their baby, or even more bonded to each other, rather than like they had to shut down somehow to like just push through.
Oh, that's so good. So good. So can you explain a little bit about why tummy time is important?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many studies out there that have shown, right? So first of all, if we back up a little, tummy time wasn't, our parents weren't saying tummy time. Our parents were saying, I put the baby down, right?
Right. They were sleeping on their bellies. Yeah.
Because my mother, I'm almost 50, my mother was told in the 1970s that the safest place for me was to be, to sleep on my tummy. And so for many of us, that was the case. And when babies are, and I'm not advocating for that, I advocate for following the back to sleep guidelines, but when babies are put to sleep or just put down on their tummy early, like in the first days, they tend to accept it more readily. So we probably, our generations, from before 1990 something, when this began, we probably spent a lot of time on our bellies in prone. And so when we were awake as well as asleep. So there's been a big shift. And from what I've read, what happened with this back to sleep health recommendation is that actually the milestone charts for babies began to be rewritten because a lot of things were starting to happen later on average.
Makes sense.
And so there's a lot of motor development that lying on your stomach is aided by. And so there are lots of studies that show that it's an influence on, obviously, babies. Like one of the first things they talk about is that it affects babies' movement while they're on their tummy. Well, we didn't really, need a study to tell us that if they lie on their tummy, they'll learn to move on their tummy. But also actually that it affects their movements on their back. their range of movements, variety of movements, and also contributes to crawling, right? That other things scaffold onto this tummy time.
Yeah, isn't it helping them build some of the strength in their posterior chain on that backside of their body?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And those are the muscles that are keeping me right now from collapsing forwards as
Right.
right. Those are muscles that help us with sitting and standing, for instance. Um,
And does it accelerate the going from the C-shaped spine to S by
yeah,
having tummy time?
yeah.
I would think. I
So
don't actually know.
when babies are born, I have my baby doll here. When babies, let's see, can I get it on camera? Yeah. When babies come into the world, their spine is described as a C shape. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the first secondary curve that begins to develop is the cervical curve here. And that's influenced by our experience. It's not just happening sort of, on a timeline. And so when babies are spending a lot of time with this lifting movement of their head,
Mm-hmm.
it begins to influence that development of the cervical curve.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there are many, movement reasons, directly motor development reasons for it, but and there are other reasons for it as well. Like for instance, when we lie when we're lying on the ground, we're getting our body has a lot of pressure, in pressure points into the ground, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we're lying on our back, the back of our head, our shoulder blades, right, the small of our back is lifted, lumbar area. There are parts of our body that are pressed into the floor and parts that are lifted away. And so then we begin to map those parts of our body. We begin to become clear about where we are in space, partly from that contact. And so a baby who spends little to no time on their tummy in gravity, right? Because they'll get some of it from being up against a parent, but in gravity with all of that weight gives them a lot of sensory information about their body that is influential to movement and also to self-regulation. Yeah.
And it sounds like that speaks to one of the questions that you said you get regularly, and I get as well in my work about the question of, isn't baby wearing, with baby facing in, isn't breastfeeding an equal substitute for tummy time? But I think you just answered, no, not fully, because the gravity isn't there. Yeah.
Yeah, and in terms of muscle building as well, and also just muscular coordination, learning to make different movements. All right, see if I can bring baby doll in. The frame of my, of what I'm.
It's always so small.
Oh, I'm gonna have to do it up here instead of like on my chest, or else you'll just get a close up of my chest. So when I'm wearing a baby, which I'm all for baby wearing, I'm just not all for this recommendation as being a substitute. And the baby, here, I have to go sideways wearing my baby doll here. When I'm wearing a baby and they start to lift their head, right, what's happening in terms of how they're dealing with gravity? They're actually, right, if you or I do it, you can do it if you want. If I do that myself, I immediately feel, actually, it's the muscles along the front of me that are hanging on to make sure I don't go backwards.
Yeah, interesting.
And the muscles of my back, they may be doing some small amount of contraction, but they're not really, they're not being challenged to lift the head at all. But then bring that baby to make that same shape, but in this orientation, and now they have, it's actually very challenging, obviously, that a very heavy part of their body that they have to figure out the leverage and counterbalance of what's going to go down to lift that, and to build muscle to lift their head against gravity. So it's the same shape and it's of value, and baby wearing and all that contact is incredibly valuable, but we can't compare it as as a direct substitute. It's really actually quite a different movement.
Yeah, thank you for getting so specific on that. That really just helps me process that, because just my gut reaction whenever I've heard that that's a substitute, I feel like that just something about that doesn't quite feel right, at least not 100% substitute, but so that really helps. Thank you so much.
Yeah, And there's something else to say, which is if those babies whose parents are doing that, who are substituting baby wearing, those babies will be okay.
Sure.
Right? Those
Yeah.
babies are going to walk and talk. And
They're getting
it's
so
just,
many great benefits from the
they
baby
are.
wearing.
There's a lot of
Hmm.
benefit there. It's just that this recommendation for it being a substitute means that we limit the variety of their experience. And
Hmm.
babies are learning so much through having a great variety of experiences. And so I
Mm.
think it's it's for many probably more ideal to have that wider variety that includes tummy time. Mm.
Mm. Yeah, great. So how, common question is, how early do I start? We talk about this a little bit in childbirth class, but I'm interested in hearing your insights on this.
Yeah. So here, this is for a highly scientific moment. I'm going to quote you a study.
I love
That,
it.
but wait,
Or maybe I won't.
maybe not. A study that was quoted to me that was never published that I heard about 15 years ago. So
Okay.
this is a terribly unscientific answer, but so I heard about a study when I was first studying working with babies that was done at hospital associated with University of Chicago, and they showed that babies, if they were put on their tummy in the first day or so of life, I don't remember what the span was, the first hours or the first day, that then they accepted it more readily following
Interesting.
that. So I
Huh.
don't know if that's been studied and published, but
Hmm.
it makes sense to me. Um, and part of the reason that it makes sense to me is that babies put on a lot of weight really fast, including in their head. And so lifting
They're
one,
so head heavy.
their head is between a quarter and one third of their body weight, right? So
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
that's a lot, right? Now,
Hmm.
so an adult's head is something like 12 pounds. So you can kind of do the math of like what the fraction is for our own weight. It's not a quarter to a third, right?
We're close. Yeah.
Right. So, and at the end of a tiring or stressful day, or just a happy day where you've just been sitting a whole lot, and where do most of us feel it in our neck or
Hmm.
shoulders that our head's been a lot to support through the day. Right? So,
Hmm.
um, so it's a lot. And so you can imagine that as a baby gets older and they're putting on, let's call it head weight, um, that it becomes more and more challenging. And so whether or not this study that I quoted, whether I got it right, whether it was ever confirmed, it just seems really reasonable to me, and it's been something I've watched over and over again, that when babies have this experience early on, and somewhat regularly, that
Hmm.
that their muscular growth can keep up with their head growth.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And
What about the, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I don't know if there was a good and there. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, what about some people? I bring this up in class that your baby they may enjoy it less until their cord stump falls off, just because that might be uncomfortable being on their tummy when the stump is still there. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Yeah. So there are lots of, let's say, flavors of tummy time. And so maybe before that happens, it makes sense to mostly do tummy time on their parent's chest. And the parent doesn't have to be all the way flat, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if it seems like it's just too much pressure on their abdomen
Mm-hmm.
when they're flat on a firm surface, then
Mm-hmm.
uh, I think it's totally fine to hold off. And there's a lot of benefit to be had to do all kinds of modified, almost tummy times. Or I mean, it's still, I don't know what is officially tummy time and what's not. So
Right.
parents should, I think, feel really free to follow their baby's comfort in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And if the parent is a little bit on, like if they're on a wedge pillow or something, or just a bunch of pillows, so the parent, as actually many mothers are taught to do this laid back nursing. I forget
Mm-hmm.
all
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yep.
Um, So if you're lying down at something like 45 degrees, then your baby doesn't have, and your baby's trying to adjust their body, they don't have as much pull and gravity like we talked about before, which means probably less pressing their belly button into the you or whatever surface they're on. So that might be a way to kind of tiptoe in.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate for laid back breastfeeding, and so that makes so much sense that you're getting that tummy time if you're in a quite reclined position. Nice. That's a nice combination.
Yeah. So if parents are already doing that and set up for that, then that's an easy way in.
And then when you're introducing it, one physical therapist I know was recommending to put a little bolster, like a rolled up towel or a rolled up blanket underneath the upper body to anchor the baby's feet. Any thoughts on that?
I think it's fine. Yeah, so let me think about that out loud a little with you. So bring my baby doll back. I have to kind of float them in the air here. So here they are flat on their tummy, and then we put a little something under their chest. And so what we've done is we've taken over some of the work of these muscles. And we're doing it from the outside by just propping them up a little bit. And so for a baby who seems uncomfortable, like maybe they're trying to turn their head, but they're stuck, that could really make some difference in their ease of lifting their head. And so again, it could be a nice way in. I don't understand.
The recommendation was just sort of as a beginner's tummy time, and then the advanced tummy time would be to remove the bolster.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
But is it the feet thing that doesn't really resonate?
I wouldn't have thought of the feet part because babies' first few months that they're on their tummy aren't really anchoring their feet to do a lot. But that's okay. Everyone kind of thinks about things different. But so I wouldn't have said it as, what it does for their feet as much as the fact that it makes their head a little freer to lift.
That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, I think it had something to do with, I don't think I said this, but the professional who was recommending this was saying that babies don't like their feet to be flailing, and that when they're flatter, their feet tend to go up more. Yeah, so that was the idea of like helping them like it more. But
yeah, I'm not sure about that one, but that's, that's fine. And if that's working for people, wonderful.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. But that makes so much sense about the head. Yeah. So another question that folks ask a lot is not only how soon do we start this, but how often and for how long?
Yeah. So, okay. So.
And I just watched a video of yours on YouTube. I think it was that one, because I watched the course and I watched a.
I was just gonna steal my own line from that video. So
please do. It was great.
Now I feel but I'm gonna say it anyway. So if I say by 4 months old, your baby should be doing 81 minutes of tummy time, the people who are watching us can notice what happens to their own breathing right now.
Anxiety, maybe.
So there was a study that said that. Right.
Brave.
There's a lot to say about that. A lot of the studies that I've read give a number. Right, so I read 81 minutes. There was a study I read that said 1 hour and 14 minutes. Right, that they come up with a number based on the babies that they're watching, and they're looking at the statistics of, okay, when did they hit certain milestones? Is usually the measure that they're evaluating by, and it's fine and it's helpful information to a point. But it's not always helpful information to a parent.
No.
And if you look at a million, I don't know, a million, a lot of websites across, across the internet of parents' advice, where they're giving advice to parents. The people who quote these studies, by and large, say, so push your baby through because it's worth it.
No, I don't like that advice.
No, and no, well, I guess some people do, but I don't think most people like that advice. And
Yeah.
and this goes back to that feeling of being stuck between, sort of authorities' advice and listening to your baby.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we also have a lot of studies that show that parent-baby relationship is incredibly important, right? And if you
Mm-hmm.
feel like you're shutting off to accomplish this thing, and you're just like, watching your phone, the stopwatch on your phone or whatever, instead of being with your baby, then we have lots of studies that also show that there's not only a lack of benefit there, but there could be a detriment there.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So, that's not to say that that's like, these researchers are not making recommendations usually based on it. They're just saying, look, we watched these 100 babies and this is what we saw. That,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it's just how it's getting interpreted by our sort of very
Mm-hmm.
goal-oriented culture of, okay, we just put this in and then we'll get that out. But actually, that's not how it works, right?
Yeah.
So part of what's I don't want to say missing in the studies, because it's not, the studies are doing what they wanted to do, but part of what they're not including, because for a study to be a good study, it has to be kind of narrow, right? Well, they're not looking, for instance, for one thing, they're not looking at the quality, right? So like you and I are sitting, and so we can find a whole bunch. I think you're sitting. I'm sitting
I
right now.
am. I'm on a ball. Yep.
I had to tell you what you were doing. Your head. But when we can find a bunch of studies that say sitting is like worse than cigarettes, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff like that.
Right. Yeah.
Well, what kind of sitting? Well, if I'm sitting and I'm collapsed into myself, that probably is worse than the way you're sitting on a physio ball. And because
Mm-hmm.
you have some dynamic movement happening and muscular engagement happening, and you're not collapsing into your chair.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the quality of it, and for a baby in their tummy, on their tummy, there's other qualities that we can think about as well, right? We can think, all right, is this pleasant? Are they having sort of a happy 5 minutes on their tummy,
Mm-hmm.
or is this neutral? They're okay. It's like, they're just going along. Is it connected? Like, is the parent in it with them, or are they sort of on
Mm-hmm.
their own? And is it sort of a happy on their own time, or are they really looking for connection and not getting it?
Mm.
Or is it, fussy? I'm almost done.
No,
Or
I love it. It's all good.
right?
Keep
Are they
going.
fussing along, like, let's say, to a degree that, in other positions we might try to shift their attention, but they're not thrilled, but they have some freedom of movement. Or is it just like, miserable, right? So are they like muscles balled up and tight, uh, and I haven't read studies where they talked about that kind of thing, and that matters a whole lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so um, those people who are giving advice based on these numbers often leave out the fact that actually it makes a big difference whether your baby's exploring movement, even if it's a little fussy, or
Mm-hmm.
if they're just in lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
And which one, you can guess which one I think is more beneficial to stay on
Mm-hmm.
the tummy on.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there's that. Then there's also the environment that you create for them, and the sort of container of the parent. Like, are they fussy and the parent's kind of in it with them, or are they fussy and on their, and having to sort it out on their own?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, of course, what kind of more environment stuff, right? Like, what were they on, right? Are they doing 81 minutes on a marble floor or on memory foam? Those would be different
Mm-hmm.
experiences with different
Oh,
outcomes.
great point. Yeah, great
Um,
point.
Hopefully they're not on a marble floor. That sounds terrible.
Yeah. It feels very cold and
Sorry
hard.
for the image. And then, yeah, I already alluded to it a little, but then there's also like the connection with the parent. Like, right, are we watching until the timer gets to 81 minutes? I hope not every day.
Oh.
Or are we actually, interacting with our baby? So like those are all really equally important things. And so it's kind of a non-answer answer or
Yeah.
just like a super broad answer to
No, it's
this
good.
narrow question is like, how many minutes? Well, actually,
Let's
it's
get away from that
impossible to
thinking.
answer without thinking also about like, all of these other
Mm-hmm.
parts of it. And
Mm-hmm.
and so no one really knows.
Sure.
It's a pretty sure thing that lots of happy tummy time is better than little.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then everything else is a gradation that that we don't really, I don't think we know for sure.
Mm-hmm. And something I always like to point out is with, my students and coming to birth class, expecting a baby, not parents, they don't have their baby in their arms yet, is that in the first few weeks of a baby's life, their waking period is pretty short. There's not much more time for much, there's not time for much more than feeding the baby, changing the diaper, a little burping, maybe 3 minutes of tummy time, and then it's time to help them go back to sleep
Yeah.
before they, get overtired and overstimulated, and which makes it harder for them to sleep. Because you
Right.
and I know sleep begets sleep, right?
Right.
So that we can't expect or aim for. I don't think it's a healthy goal to try to aim for big chunks of tummy time, at least in the first few weeks. We'll grow into that as the baby's able to stay awake for longer periods.
Yeah.
But I love that idea of just like, let's not look at the clock so much on tummy time.
Yeah, I think it's so important that babies have this experience, but because we took it away from being just a normal thing, like because it became a little bit scary because of avoiding it at sleep, and then it became this special thing that we had to do. That there's that problems that we can work around over. We can get through these, but little problems came up because of that. That our relationship with this became like, okay, it became a little bit exercisey and a little bit medicine-y, right? Like we have to make sure we do it each day this way.
Prescriptive, yeah.
And that takes parents, out of the experience of just relating to their child and into being, sort of this deputized physical therapist or something, which is, not where they should be.
Right, yeah. Now, okay, so I'm going to spring something on you.
Okay.
Without a heads up. Well, it's still a question that we had discussed.
That's fine.
Discussing. But I connected with someone I interviewed for my podcast whose birth story aired a few weeks ago on my podcast. And she works for your wife, for Esther. And she was talking about how the philosophical approach of where they work together, she's like, she's my boss. She let me know. She's like, that's so funny that you're interviewing Dan. I was like, oh, we've known each other for years. Anyway, so this brings me to, I keep wondering how your household and your relationship is surrounding this course that you've created, given that Esther's philosophical approach and the work that she does in early childhood, correct, is very much about following your baby's lead, and that babies are very smart beings. I'm probably not articulating it quite as they would, or as she would, but yeah, so I think you brought up this question about wanting, shouldn't I follow my baby's lead? Shouldn't I just let my baby figure it out by themselves? So what are your thoughts on that? And what does that look like in your household, if you're willing to share any of that?
Are you looking for dirt?
I'm looking for dirt.
All right. You're going to be disappointed.
No, only okay.
Yeah, no, I definitely could speak to this, but there's not a lot of, this is not where our marital conflicts lie.
Okay. You stay away from the professional realm.
Well, not only that, but actually I'd say we pretty much agree on all this. Um,
Great.
yeah, what I'm advocating and what I'm teaching does not in any way propose that babies do not have there's too many negatives. I absolutely believe that babies have inherent wisdom that the that are we have body wisdom that we come into that babies are actually just incredible, and that there's much more that I don't understand about development than I do. I firmly believe that. And so I'm not interested in sort of like imposing, like, here's the right way, baby. That's not actually what I'm doing at all.
And I got that very much from going through your course. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I figured this would kind of be the direction it would go, but I just had to ask you.
yeah. So, but there are people who take that to the point of just follow your baby's lead. They'll show you the way. And in some ways that's true until it's not, until it's 0 degrees outside and your toddler won't put on a coat.
Oh,
Right?
wow. Boy, do I remember those years.
And then, right? And then, okay, you could do child-led dressing, I guess.
Will you ever go anywhere?
And take them out in 0 degrees, in their diaper, but you shouldn't. You should have some information for your child that they don't have yet. But also there's a matter of how you present it, right? You could hardline it and be like, we are putting on this coat, right? We'll see how that goes. And even if it works in the short term, again, that's going to have some long-term detrimental parts to it, probably, for your relationship, if that's your common go-to way to get things done, to overpower. Or, all right, this won't work every time, but you could open the window, the snow could come blowing in, you could bring them right up to it in their diaper, and we could be like, let's try this out. Let's see how this feels for a moment. How are you feeling? Now,
that's a good one.
It's possible that they'll be like, great, and then we do next.
You're like, oh no, crap. What do I do?
But you have a good chance that they'll be like, I'm cold. Oh my goodness, what should we do? Oh, you know what? I have these fuzzy pants. Do you want to try them and see how those feel? Right. So it really, the thing is, there's nothing our babies do from birth that they do by themselves. There are echoes. First of all, there are ways that so much, then we're learning more and more, is passed down to them. That they're coming into the world with not just the body and mind that we gave them, but something of our history. But there's also just echoes from day one, echoes of the way we touch and move our babies in their experiments, right? So when your baby learns to roll over all by themselves, they've done it with a lot of influence. They've learned about their body and movement from the way they were moved and held. Mm-hmm. And so we're always in this together. That's why actually the course, the in-person course I teach with parents and babies is called We Grow Together. Mm-hmm. That we're in this soup of learning together, and that there's to say that we're going to just wait and let them do it by themselves is fine, and gives your baby some space to figure some things out. Perhaps that's the most positive mm-hmm. part of it, but it can deny our own role in this, which is actually important and doesn't have to be sort of domineering. Yeah. So, God, where was this all going? Oh, so, when working with parents in TummyTime or anything else, I'm teaching them not to show the baby, and now this is TummyTime technique. Make sure, nope, pelvis should be down a little. no, a little more to the left, right? Um, remember, anchor that belly button. I'm not being like a personal trainer to a 2-month-old or teaching parents,
Mhm.
but instead I'm asking them to ask questions with their hands, to ask questions with the way they move their babies. And the questions are thought out and have a reason behind them, of something we're hoping to, that the baby might infer from it. But I never, another practitioner once said something that I loved. She said, like, she only knows how to give really good information to children or babies, but she doesn't know what they're going to do with that. And that it's part of the joy of doing this work to see where they take the good information that we gave. Yeah.
Mhm.
So this Tummy Time Together course is, in this vein. It's how do we ask really good questions that set babies up for potentially finding and possibility. Oh,
Uh-oh, your video is
uh-oh.
frozen, but I hear you fine though.
Okay, let's see.
You can
Um,
keep talking because hopefully the video will come back.
okay, hopefully. So how do we ask really good questions that, not just random questions, but that have, a potential to set the baby up for discovery, but there's zero insistence on what they come up with. And in fact, we're ready to be excited and, wowed by where it goes. Yeah. So, yeah.
Something I love about your course is that the parent does the movements on their, like on themselves first and experiments with that. And it's such a meditative, great way to gain body awareness for ourselves. I love the course. One thing that well, I don't know, it shouldn't have surprised me because I've taken classes with you in the
Mm-hmm.
past, not with babies, but just for myself. And it is so meditative, and it's a great form of self-care, which I think is so important for new parents.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one aspect that I love that I think a lot of people wouldn't know to expect from a tummy time course, because it sounds like it's all about the baby, but it's so much about the parent as well. And then leading us into, once we have that bodily awareness, then that helps us to better connect with our baby as we're then doing some things with them and bonding with them and singing to them. I love that you sing with the baby in parts of it, and it just helps everybody enjoy it more. I mean, I love singing. Not everybody does, but I know that babies love the sound of our voices and
Yeah.
love, songs.
Yeah.
So I just
Yeah.
wanted to mention
Yeah.
those things.
Yeah. I appreciate you bringing those up. I mean, the singing, the good news is babies love hearing their parents sing, even if their parents are just terrible singers.
Exactly. Totally.
And so important, actually. I should say, even
Mm-hmm.
if the parents think they're terrible singers, because usually people are much harder on themselves than is.
Yes.
But
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, babies really need to hear their parents' voice, not just a CD. It's so important, and babies respond so strongly to music,
Mm-hmm.
almost universally, and so it has to be, I think, in there. Um, and I love singing. I came to this as a musician and as an injured musician when I first began learning this method, and so yeah. So now I can, I studied historical performance practice on Renaissance and Baroque plucked strings, but now I play ukulele for babies, and that's pretty good. I'm
Uh-huh.
happy with that.
I
um,
love it.
so so the so the other thing, I appreciate you bringing up the movement for parents. I've always I had a little trepidation about emphasizing that part, just because I didn't know if parents would feel like, oh, I don't, like that might be too much. And they don't, like too much time requirement. But there are, I think, 3 less than 10-minute, very
Yeah.
meditative, low, gentle movement practices for parents.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not absolutely, you can go through the course without doing them, but it really makes it so much richer,
Mm-hmm.
because you begin to have, right, the movements that we're asking our babies to do are not movements that we do all day long, right? That we're not hanging out on this Instagram on our tummies, right?
Right.
Interesting if we did a tummy time chat. And uh, so it's like we're asking them to do something that's not so immediate in our own experience. And even though our head is not a quarter to a third of our body weight, it's plenty challenging, actually. And when you feel that challenge, it really does change the way you touch and move your baby.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, you've felt it from the inside. And as you're moving them, you're sensing something in your own body in a way that you probably would not have had you not done some experiments with the movement for yourself. Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit of the thinking behind, so some of the movements for both the parent and the baby are on the back, right? And then some are on the belly. What is the thinking behind doing some on the back?
Yeah. So in the early, in one of the early parts of the course.
Sorry if I missed it. I might have missed that. You probably explained that and I missed it.
I don't know. Well, I don't think I did. Well, I'm not sure. But in the early part of the course, there's some work on the back that begins with body awareness, that begins with how do we help babies begin to know their own body. And that work doesn't have to be done in the position that's most challenging to them. It can be, in fact, not just can, it probably should be most beneficial and absorbed if it's in a place where they feel safe and settled. Yeah, and where the parent feels settled and connected. So that's why we start on the back. Not every baby likes to be on their back, so parents can adapt it. But to begin with exploring movement, first of all, exploring the body, and then exploring movements that are going to be helpful to them to make adjustments for their comfort when they're on their tummy, that we can explore those movements first, again, where they feel safe and most receptive. Because if we bring them, right, if we bring them to their tummy and then try it, it's like, it's like, it's more of the jumping off the deep end of the pool technique of learning to swim. And for most babies, that's not the way to go. For most babies, it's the dipping a toe in the shallow side and going in one step is more readily received, especially most babies whose parents are watching my course, right? Because that's a self-selecting group of babies who just being plopped on their tummy didn't work.
Right. They're like, we need tools to help us go better.
So if that's the case, then to begin the process to meet them where they are, as so many methods talk about, makes a lot more sense. That we start in where they're comfortable and receptive, settled, and we can feel connected.
Yeah, I love it. And another thing that occurred to me in first doing this with baby on their back, and engaging with them and moving their arms and moving their legs and all of that, is the eye contact that babies love. Yeah, what little vision they have at first when they're first born, they can see you and they love to look into your eyes. And so I was just thinking that is another aspect to my thinking of a way to ease them into tummy time, where when they roll over, unless they look sideways, they're probably not going to be seeing us as readily. But which I always loved the idea of, after I was pregnant, being able to lie on my belly was a great thing. So I always would lie on my belly next to the baby and, talk to them. And that seemed to help them to like it more than they would if I wasn't side by side with them.
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And what you say is, it doesn't have to be that we disconnect visually once they're on their tummy, right? Like some parents tell me, and this is like just a little tip that I got from parents that people watching might like, that their baby has really enjoyed tummy time where the baby's up on a raised bed or some surface, and the parents obviously, got their hand on them, making sure they're, and then the parent can sit on the floor, and then they can be face. And so for a parent who's not comfortable getting down on the floor on their tummy, if maybe you had a C-section and you're not ready down there yet, having some face-to-face connection is like almost all of where it's at when
Right.
when you're 2 months old or so. So
Mm-hmm.
um, that can be a great way to do it. Hmm.
Oh, I love that. I love it. I love hearing creative ideas. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Great. Well, we're running toward the time when in the next 7 minutes or so we might get cut off by Instagram because
Uh-huh.
of their deadline. Um, can you please just share any final things that you didn't get to share yet? And then how can people, well, obviously they can go over to your We Grow Together NYC. Am I saying that right? Your handle
Yeah, We Grow
to
Together
find you?
is Instagram, or wegrowtogether.nyc is my website.
Great. And you can
Um,
find the course there as well as you have
yeah,
I think other offerings in person, well, or virtual classes.
yeah, I mean,
Um,
I have a small, I have a limited number of live classes that are either on Zoom or in person in Prospect Park in Brooklyn.
oh,
Um,
nice.
a couple a week that way. But then I have this Tummy Time Together video course, uh, which if you go to wegrowtogether.com or .nyc, it's there's at the top it says downloads, and it's the first download. Yeah.
Great.
And the course is okay. Maybe I can just say real briefly about what the course is.
Please do. I would love that.
Yeah. So the course is late. You can use it any way you like, but it's laid out to be used over the course of 3 days, and then you can go back to it as much as you want. And so it's organized as 3 days of less than an hour per day, and that less than an hour of video is actually broken up into 10-minute or smaller chunks, so that you can do it. You can go through it during naps and other things, and you don't have to find your place and pick up again, because most of the time you'll be able to get through these little segments, and then so I complete one idea and then go on to the next in a new video segment,
Mm-hmm.
and um, and it begins with some theory about why tummy time is so difficult, and this thinking behind this approach, and then goes very quickly into practice, into in the first 10-minute video already there are suggestions for interaction with your baby, to start working toward this in this way that's building relationship. For the begin for the first group of people who buy, I'm actually offering a short live Zoom call with me as well, as part of the course. And then
Nice.
as that gets too busy to commit to,
Mm-hmm.
then it will become a live Q&A that I'll do. But
Mm-hmm.
as I'm just releasing this course now, and I want to make sure it's landing with people and that their questions are answered, and that I can clarify things with them, I'm doing short Zoom calls where people can come to me with their questions as they go through the course.
Ah, I love that.
Hmm.
Nice personal touch.
Yeah.
Excellent. So they can just go to your website to take
So
advantage of that,
yeah,
because I
so
think I saw that.
it actually, what they can do is, if they go to my website, they can start. There's sort of a mini course uh, that introduces this program that they can download for free today. So if they go to my website to those downloads, they'll find that, and they can try this Tummy Time Together mini course, about 15 minutes, where I give some beginning ideas, and if it feels like a fit and they're interested in learning more from me, then they can go on and try this course. Yeah.
Wonderful. And everyone who's watching, I highly recommend it. If you have been watching this video, you've heard me praise specific aspects of it, but I really think it's such a wonderful way to bond with your baby and to make this less stressful, hopefully not stressful at all, to remove that from it and just to make it about connecting with your baby and growing together with your baby through tummy time. Pun intended.
Nice.
Well, thank you so much, Dan. It's been lovely talking with you, and I'm excited that this is it's just such a wonderful resource that you're offering to new parents.
Oh,
Last question, real quick.
yeah.
Sorry, I meant to ask this. Is there an ideal time to start this course, or is it kind of just any time in the first few months of a baby's life?
Oh, yeah. There. This is very open, like including an older baby, over 6 months who's still hating it. This is very relevant to them. So, yeah,
Okay,
yeah. There's no. It's intended for any time in the first year when tummy time is a challenge. Yeah.
great. Oh, thank you, Dan.
Thank you so much for doing this with me. It was really great to speak to you.
You too. Have a great day.
You too. Take.
Bye.
Bye bye.